Level by Level Gaming, and let's do another video on the Retroid Pocket 2 here. Now, the first video I did was just an unboxing and first impressions of the device. The second video, I went and showed you guys where to buy it, who's offering it, how much you should expect to pay, and how long it's going to take to get to you. So, I've already had some people ask me about gameplay. And when I was trying to figure out how I wanted to show the gameplay on this and how I was going to address it, I figured the best thing is to show you the quick and easy way to pick this thing up and get straight into some gaming. And that's going to be utilizing the dual boot option that this thing comes with, which I think is pretty unique. So when you first cut it on here, you're going into an Android operating system. Now with the Android operating system, that's where this device really shines. It has a lot of customization that you can do, picking different emulators and tweaking and getting the best performance out of this. But I do realize that some people might not want to get into all this complicated stuff and having to go in here and tweak and play around with this stuff. Some people just want to buy this thing and jump straight into some gaming. So the first thing that I'm going to show you, and the topic of the video today, is booting into the Retroid Pocket proprietary operating system, which, despite its flaws, is very simple and easy to use. So the very first thing we're going to do here is we're going to go into our settings and we're going to make sure that we cut our Wi-Fi on. Now, if you hold the home button down, you can see right off the bat that it's on this D-pad, where you can use the D-pad and highlight whatever you want to interact with and go that route. But if you hold down the home button for a few seconds, it'll give you a mouse. So I'm going to pick this up a little bit. My camera on my phone really does not like this screen. If you see, if I cover up the light from that, you can see so much clearer, but whenever that blue light or whatever it is comes off of that, it really does mess with a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to go to Wi-Fi, and I've already connected into my Wi-Fi here, but you would pick your Wi-Fi. It would bring up this little guy here where you would go in and type in your password and connect. None of that's necessary. I've already connected into mine, but you're going to have to make sure that you do that, and you might have to cut this little toggle switch on here in order for it to be able to recognize your Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is important because you're going to need to hop over into your toolbox here, and you're going to need to make sure that you have the Retroid app. Now you can use the D-pad to scroll down, or you can kind of grab it with the mouse where you hold down the A button here. I hope you guys can see my fingers, see what I'm pushing. Push the A button and you can kind of grab it and scroll with it. But you're going to go to the toolbox here and you're going to need to install the Retroid Pocket app. I've already got mine installed, but you're going to need to do that because here is where you're going to boot into the Retroid operating system. Now, once you've got this, it's going to ask you, do you want to reboot into the Retroid Pocket? And yes. Now, it's going to go through that whole load up screen all over again. So I'm going to take this opportunity just to talk to you a little bit about the Retroid operating system. It's simple. I think it looks decent. And you can get right straight into some preloaded games that are already on this thing, shipped from the company, and there are quite a few of them that operate really well. And then there are the games that just do not play well at all, or they are hit or miss, whatever you run into. Your mileage may vary, so you might just need to play around with that. But here we go. we are booted into the Retroid Pocket operating system. If you are familiar with any of the Pandora's Box systems, in fact, if you go back into my playlist, December of 2020, I got a Pandora's Box 3D and built a multicade for somebody, and this is the exact same operating system that they have on those Pandora's Box. Now, that's something that's pretty common with these companies, is they do a lot of cloning and copying and piggybacking off of each other's designs, and that's exactly what they did here. But I will say they did do some improvements over the Pandora's Box, and we'll cover that in a few seconds. So firing right up here, I'll tell you what I do like. I do like this list system here, and you can see some icons going down the side of the screen showing you what system that these games come from. You can see the name of the game, and you can see some little icons that tell you descriptions of the games. Little box for 3D, let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. You can see that there is a little thing for racing, 3D, a little flag for adventure. The cross swords means fighting, and usually there's some different things, a little soccer ball for sports and whatnot. That's all pretty cool. I like having this little video snap of the game and some instructions across the bottom here. If you hit X, you have to be connected into the Wi-Fi. If you hit X, it'll go into the home store, game store. You can hit the start button to search a game. Y for net play. I did have somebody message me and say that they bought two of these. The lady said she bought one for her husband and one for her. And if you had two of these, you could do net play and play against each other. Now, unfortunately, I do not have two of these, and I don't know how to do that. So that might have to come at a later time, or you might have to go and do some digging and searching to figure out how to do some net play. It does say that if you hold the home button down, you're going to get into the settings. So let's just go ahead and do that first, and hold the home button down so you can see what some of these settings are. So under the handheld settings here, you can set up your Wi-Fi. It's just the same. It's very simple. Go and just connect into your Wi-Fi there, just like you would before. And they do a good job of giving you instructions along the side of the screen on all these different options that you do. Let's get back out of that. You could set up a Bluetooth for a Bluetooth controller if you like. Brightness, sound, sleep. I've got mine set to never. You can play around with that and set it to different times or different time frames. Auto shutdown, I got mine set for 4 hours. Show battery is enabled, HDMI settings, and you can fix your date and time, because to be sure, whenever you get it in for the first time, it is not going to be set up correctly. So let's back out of that. Key settings. This was something that was very disappointing to me. I wanted to be able to go in here and map my gamepad and set these buttons to do specifically what I want them to do, not just for whole emulators and whole section of games, but also individual games. And I'll show you why that would be important and why they should have included this. But when you go in here, it's completely blank, and you cannot change your keys on this, and that really stinks. I really would have liked to have been able to set some custom buttons for there. Game settings, you can enter into some game settings, and let's see, image optimization. I'm gonna go ahead and go with that because I like the idea of getting what that does is that is going to soften the edges and the pixelation on the games. It gives almost like a modern look to it, and I like that. You could mess around with some turbo fire if you wanted to do that, and you could also show your frames per second. Let's go ahead and let's let it show some frames per second, because I want you to see some of the performance of this thing. We could also set some difficulties and lives. Delete games if there were games on here, which I'll probably have to go through that because I have downloaded some games that don't work from their marketplace. And you could also get rid of them all and start all over again. Let's back out of this. You could enter the game market from here. User wizard, set your language, factory data reset. If you really just messed this thing all up and didn't know what you did, you can get it right back to how you started, and you can switch back to the Android system from here. Let's just go ahead and enter into the game market and let you see how that goes. So when you first get into the market here, you can have a download chart. I think this just shows you some of the games that have been downloaded for this thing. Well, no, Crazy Taxi. I don't think I've downloaded Crazy Taxi. Anyways, not really sure how that works. Popular chart. You can see what's trending on this thing. Increasing popularity. So let's go ahead and go to new game chart, and this is some of the stuff that they're offering now. I don't know how often this stuff is updated, but you can go through some of those. I kind of like to go through categories and go. I've went to some specific systems here just because I wanted to look for some specific games. And you can go into specific things here with like the PSP, Dreamcast, Nintendo 64. Those were things that I was really interested in getting games for, and do them very, very specifically. But I will tell you, and I'm going to use this time to show you a very specific example, is if you go to like here with your Castlevania, Chinese version. That's supposed to be Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I think it's like Rhapsody Under the Moon or something like that is how they describe that particular game. And I downloaded both versions that they have from this Play Store, and they're both in a different language, and I can't read it, don't understand. I could play the game. The game plays fine, but just be warned that when you go into these markets, you might not be able to get it in English. Let's go up to search. Now, that being said, also, something I found out is when you go to a search for a game, you might not be able to find the game based on what you're typing in, because these things are notoriously labeled wrong. I was looking for Resident Evil Codename Veronica, and I ended up having to go with for the Dreamcast, and I believe they had it in there as biochemical something. I don't know. Anyway, couldn't find it, but I'll give you an example of something I did find by going through the search, and that was I wanted Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for Nintendo, and it wasn't on here. So if you get as far as Mike, I think it's like the first one that pops up. Yeah, so that is an example of being able to find Mike Tyson's Punch-Out doing the search options there. So that was one of the examples where it actually worked. And whenever you go into a game, you find a game you want to download. I've already downloaded it, but it would go through a process where you hit install here, and it would start downloading. Let's see, I'm trying to think of an example of a game. Let's see. I just want to show you guys downloading the game. Let's just find a small one, which would be like Nintendo. So see how like under Nintendo it's Maple Story. This to me this would be Adventure Island. So let's just do Double Dragon. I don't know if they have. I'm trying to think of something that I don't remember seeing on there. Let's just go with Double Dragon 2. Oh, it's already on here. Okay, so here's an example of a game that was not on here for Nintendo, Double Dragon. You can go to install. It's going to go through a downloading phase. It's not going to take very long. You can actually go back up here and go to the very top and go to task management, and it'll show you there's one that is in progress here. Double Dragon. Installing. And then if I was under the complete, as soon as that thing gets done, there we go. It is complete. Now, you can go in here and start the game. And of course, there we go. It is in another language. Just be prepared for that, guys. You're going to get a lot of these are in just other languages, and you're not going to be able to understand what it says. Let's back out of that exit game. All right, so that is just showing you guys an example of getting into the marketplace, finding a game, and downloading it. This quick and simple on how to do that, and also on some of the game settings. So getting back into the main menu here and displaying some games. You can either go right down the list here. You can see that there is, this is page 1 of 230. There are 10 games on each page. Those are all preloaded games. You can see, like I said, there's the name of the game, some symbols, and a little snap of the game here. You can either go down individually and go down one for one, and every time you cross a page, you'll see that it goes up, the number goes up on the bottom. So now on page 3 of 230, you can either hit the left or the right to go over full pages at a time, which is probably the better way to do that. And just like all of these clone systems, there are a ton of these King of Fighters, Street Fighters. These are all arcade classics, and they perform very, very well on these devices. All these devices, when you get them, they typically do very well with the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, and arcade type stuff. Where they seem to struggle, and this menu particularly seems to struggle, is when you get into your PlayStation and Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast, which is unfortunate because that's what I was excited about, and that's why I got this device. So going through this Retroid Pocket operating system, you're not going to have a whole lot of success with those games, but I'll get into that. I'll show you guys here in a second exactly what I'm talking about. Let's just go back to the beginning, and the easiest way I've found to do that is to see where it says start to search a game. If you hit start, it's going to automatically jump over to this search bar, but if you've noticed, see the search turned red across the top? That's actually the easiest way to get back to the very beginning, where you can go through and select the different things across the top. So if you go over from all, you hit start, and you go over, the first one over from all is categories. How this thing sets up categories is it sorts it by the operating system that that game is for, or the original console or device that this thing was originally for. And that very first one here, you can see these blue D-pad icons here. That's for the PSP. And the few games that I have on here is Ridge Racer, Initial D, and Mega Man. Those are what come preloaded on it. And then I went to the marketplace and got Wipeout to see how that would do. Let's just show you an example of playing some Ridge Racer here, and you'll see what I'm talking about with the PlayStation or the PSP and its performance. I'm just going to let it go into a cutscene here. Make sure my camera's focused here. Right off the bat, you can hear it is struggling so hard. It is not going to do well at all with this cutscene. And that is going to be typically what you find with these, is the cutscenes on these PSP games with this emulator, with this operating system. It's just not good. Let's go ahead and just get through. See if I can just show you here. Let's continue the game. I'm trying to get, there we go, World Tours. I'm just trying to get into some gameplay here. You can hear the little audio artifacts in there. Now the good thing is, and the saving grace for this thing is once you get past the initial cutscenes there and you get into the game, it's really not terrible and is playable. But you might get like a couple dips here and there, but here, I'll just show you.
3, 2, 1, go!
And the frame per second up in the top corner is showing 0, so I don't know why that's not reading. That's weird. But you can see that this is playable. I'm racing. Not really having a whole lot of problem with it here. So once you get past those cutscenes, the game itself is actually very playable. Not that I can actually play it very well, but anyways, so let's go ahead and hit the home button. Now, when you hit the home button, they do give you some different options. Now, on the PSP, it's limited to continue game, exit game, save state, and load state. If you're not familiar with emulators, save state and load state are the ability to save or take a snapshot of your game in progress and come back and start it back from that save, which is kind of neat because you couldn't just take a snapshot and save in your original consoles. That is a definite plus to emulators, and I will give Retroid Pocket here kudos for adding that option into this menu here. But they did simplify it, which is a good thing. You don't have to go through a whole lot of stuff. You can just save and load. Where most emulators, you go to save state and you have to pick a slot, and then you can do other slots. And some people just don't really want to go through all that. So let's go ahead and exit the game here. Now, Wipeout is an example of a game that I got off of the the store. Was hoping that it would play, and even if I could just get past some cutscenes, I'd be happy with that, because we've already established that cutscenes are not going to do well at all. Let's just get past all this. I mean, this was all hopeful. You know, it looked like it might play, and then immediately the problems start. And this game, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, is completely unplayable. I do not understand why the FPS is not showing up at the top. Or probably, if I had to guess, down to the single digits in the frame rate on this. The sound is terrible, and this game is just completely unplayable. So let's go ahead and exit out of this. So that's just an example of how that's going to go on the PSP. Now, when we get into the original PlayStation games, all these seem to do just fine. Like, so if we went to Tekken here, that's actually showing the FPS up there on the top of that one, and it's at 60. The cutscenes don't seem to have problems. No stutter there, no sound artifacts. And overall, just, I'll go ahead and tell you, the PlayStation games that I've tried on this seem to do just fine. Now, you are, since you can't configure the buttons to what you want them to be, you're going to have to play around with each one of these games and figure out what buttons do what. Now, something else that I want to show you is when I went to the home screen on this, it does expand into a couple different options here. You have the video aspect and the video rotation, and that's actually really cool. I do appreciate them giving you the option on this, because I've got old eyes and I do not like to squint and look at a smaller section of the screen, because if you really want to keep these things in their true original aspect ratios, some of the games are only going to take up a small portion of the screen, and there's going to be black bars on the side, and that's so you don't get this squished or stretched view of the game, which really irks some people. They don't like for the pixels to look like they've been altered in any kind of way. Like I said, I want all the real estate on the screen taken up for me, so I usually keep it in stretch. And I'll just give you an example. If you use the left and right here, you can change that video aspect ratio. Let's show you what original looks like. And so the screen is not going to be taken completely up, but the characters are going to look better and look more original to how they looked on the PlayStation. And let's see what the next one is. Full. And there wasn't even really any change there whenever I went to full. But like I said, I always set all my games to stretch because I want the entire screen taken up. And I really don't mind if it alters how the characters look and how it messes with them. So I'm good with that. The video rotation, you can rotate this thing, let's see, 90, 180, 270. You can just start flipping this thing around on the screen. And I'll show you an example of a game with that, or I was actually kind of excited about that. And theoretically, it would be great for some of the games like your vertical shooters and arcade games that would be oriented like this. But what sounds good and actually works isn't exactly the same thing. And I'll get to that whenever I show you a game that would actually be a pretty cool thing. So thanks for trying, guys, but I just really didn't find it practical use for the video rotation. So let's exit the game here. PlayStation, the original PlayStation, PSP, original PlayStation, Nintendo 64. Now, Nintendo 64 is a mixed bag. It's one of the main reasons why I got this and I was excited. And I'll go ahead and tell you, Mario Kart plays okay. It's got a few glitches and sound problems in the very first part of it, but then once you start racing, it's a decent experience. Mario 64 plays perfectly. Didn't have any issues with Mario 64. GoldenEye, I got that off of the marketplace, and as you can expect with GoldenEye and many different emulators and many different systems, it doesn't work really well at all. It's borderline playable. And Cruising World was one that I downloaded because I really like that game, and off the marketplace, and it plays flawlessly. So you have a 3D racing game with a lot going on, and that game plays flawlessly. Where Mario Kart 64 has some hiccups, some stuttering, but then once you get into the game, it does just fine. So I'm gonna give you an example of Nintendo 64 through the Retroid Pocket operating system playing perfectly, and that's going to be Mario 64. Here we go. All right. So we are in Mario 64, and this game, if it doesn't crash your system, so crazy. Once you get into the game, it plays flawlessly. I don't know why it's not showing that up there, but anyways.
Dear Mario, please come and be careful. I am Peach. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
I mean, you can see that there's no audio problems getting right into the game. It doesn't flicker or glitch, and when you're running around here, everything seems to be working just fine. Now, what I would suggest, considering I just had this crash on this game, which, like I said, I've been playing with this for a few days now and haven't experienced that, every so often I would go into the home here and save your game just in case it crashed like in the middle of the game. That's how I would safely play my game without doing a whole bunch of progress and then losing it somehow. All right, so let's go ahead and exit the game. Let's see. So Mario 64, Mario Kart, GoldenEye, we've talked about all these. Cruising World, I'll just give you an example of this. When Mario crashed, it didn't even show me that little blip of Retroid, I don't think, or something happened, and there we go. So maybe that was just a one-time thing, just weird, but you can see going into cruising here.
Choose your car.
The gameplay is just fine. It sounds fine. And it's a very playable experience. Alright, so this video is getting long. Let's see if we can round this thing out here. Let's exit the game. The Nintendo games here, the symbol is a Super Famicom, or the Famicom rather. Those all play just fine. I haven't found any of these handhelds that don't do well with most of this stuff here. I've played around with all these systems. Advanced Wars. So you got your Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, the Mega Drive, which was your Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx 16, or your PC Engine, and your Dreamcast. Now, all these through the middle here, they, like I said, never have a problem with those. All those systems should play just fine. When you get into the Dreamcast, this was something that I was very excited about, and it is very similar to the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation PSP. The games are hit or miss. Now, this very first game here was something that came preloaded on here, the Marvel vs. Capcom, and they've got it labeled as Cartoon Hero versus Capcom. Anyway, that is a game that plays on the Dreamcast version very well, and I didn't have any issues with that. I went and downloaded Resident Evil Code Veronica, and they've got it listed as Biochemical Crisis Veronica, and I'm just going to give you a preview of that. And it is going to be very, very similar to the issues you have with the PSP. And that is the cutscenes you will see are unplayable, choppy, stuttering, and it's just not going to be enjoyable at all. But once you get into the game plays just fine. Yeah. Let's just get past that because that's terrible. So let's start a game. I think I went ahead and I've already got a game going, and just testing it earlier, and I got to figure out what button does what. Memory card. All right. So once you're in the game, I mean, everything works just fine. So there's no problems. Very playable. So yeah, so Dreamcast is going to be a mixed bag there too. And once again, you're just always going to have to remember that going into the marketplace, you're probably going to find something that is in a different language or other than English. And the games can be playable, but you just don't know what it's saying because you can't read it. All right, and I think that's getting close to rounding it out, guys. F for the Final Burn Alpha. M for MAME. Those are staples in the arcade emulation scene, and all these seem to play just fine. All right, so I'm going to take this opportunity to show you the search function here, and that's something I haven't covered yet. Of course, recent is going to be games that I've played recently, and search. So like I was saying before, if you go into the search here, just take into account that your games might not be labeled the way that you think they should be. And so if I say PAC for Pac-Man, it's going to bring up a bunch of games that match that search. And you can see the very first one here, Pac-Gal. That I'm sure that is Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Land. But then when you get to Pac-Man here, under the Final Burn Alpha. You would think that'd be the first Pac-Man, but no, they have it mislabeled, and it is actually Miss Pac-Man. Now, Miss Pac-Man is an example of a game that I've actually been playing with that rotated screen, and you can see I have it set to 90 degrees, and that is because this game originally worked well in that aspect ratio, because that's how it was in the original arcade. So let's go ahead and add a quarter here. Select is usually adding a quarter, and then start is starting the game, is how these games typically went with the arcade emulators. So we are in this ratio here, and I'm using the little slider joystick, and this game is very playable. It's a very fun experience, and you can definitely enjoy it this way. Alright, I'm going to also use the opportunity to show you guys the save function. So if I hit X for save the game, and then I'll play for a little while, and I decide I want to start back from that same spot, I can hit Y, and it will start me right back to where I was at. Alright, so you see how that function works. Alright, so let me show you an example of flipping the aspect ratio and then the buttons not being able to be mapped, and how that just turns into a complete disaster, and then we'll call this a done deal. And one of my favorite games is Gunsmoke. Well, at least it popped up and gave me a warning. I haven't seen that before. Where it tells you your battery's getting low. I've been doing a lot of playing and testing with this thing. So let's go and let's look for Gunsmoke. And this is just where not having the ability to map the keys out really, because you can orient the screen, doesn't mean that it's a good thing for every game, and not being able to map the keys out is just disastrous for some things. So Gunsmoke, while we're getting this thing fired up here, that's another one of these games that's supposed to be oriented like this. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. All right, so you can see here that the way that this should, I'm going to go ahead and pause it. The way that this should be lined up is this should be shoot to the left side of the screen, this should be shoot down the middle of the screen, and this should be shoot down the right hand side of the screen. On the arcade, you have the 3 buttons, and the way that you shoot is oriented as close as you can get to this right here. And that's what makes the game playable. With this game, even though we can orient it and get it this way like we need to, which is great, we can use the little joystick down here on the bottom and move your guy down is perfectly fine. But when you get into the buttons, the fact that they're mapped all kinds of weird makes the game unplayable. So if I hit this button, he's shooting right down the middle of the screen. This button shoots to the left-hand side of the screen, and this shoots to the right. And in heated gameplay, see, I don't even know how to get that guy in the window. In heated gameplay, you're really just not going to be able to think fast enough to adjust to be able to play this game effectively. So anyways, there you have it. Let's go ahead and finish this thing out. It has been a very long one, and thank you guys for being so patient. If you want to get this thing dual boot into the Retroid Pocket system and just have at it and play some games, there you go. Now you know what to expect. Moving forward into our next series of videos are going to be moving forward with the Android operating system, getting some good emulators on here, tweaking them out, and playing these games the way they're meant to be played on this device. Once again, it's been Level by Level Gaming. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you haven't done so, hit that like button, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments.